What's up, guys? It's Chief here from Chief Live Gaming. Today we are talking about, wait for it, Khorne Daemonkin. Yes, sir or madam. Khorne Daemonkin again today. Exciting. And this video is the discussion about Tactica, strategy, just general tactics about Bloodthirsters. So if you don't know what Bloodthirsters are, or need some refreshers about the 3 different kinds of Bloodthirsters that are in this codex, go ahead and follow the link in the description of this video to another video I've made talking about that stuff. We talk about the 3 different kinds of Bloodthirsters, the war gear, special rules, stat lines, stuff like that. Give you a little bit of background info, set the foundation, so to speak, for this discussion. So watch that, come back here if you need to. All right, let's continue with let's start at the beginning, I guess, with the discussion of tactics. So the first way I want to start this discussion is with deployment. Now, this is assuming that you have a Bloodthirster in your list that you've brought as part of your roster, not summoning one. You know, you're not using Blood Tithe to get one. You're not ascending one from a character. You are bringing one as an HQ choice or whatever in your list. All right, so there's pretty much 3 choices you have, right? You can start him on the table turn 1. You can hold him in reserve and deep strike. You can hold him in reserve and fly him on the table, like a swooping monstrous creature would. So I think, if I had to guess, the most popular way that people tend to deploy Bloodthirsters is probably the swoop in off the table, vector strike goodness, and, you know, flying around, that kind of thing. That's fine. That's great. I often do that. But I want to throw a little bit of a different thought process your way. Maybe you don't think this way. Maybe you do. But I want to talk about it. And that's the power of starting your Bloodthirster on the table turn 1. Might sound weird. Hear me out. Okay, so the advantage and the whole reason that you're keeping your Bloodthirster in reserve is the idea that he's not getting shot at as much before he arrives. He's safe, right? You're not eating a turn of shooting on the ground, which is pretty dangerous. And, you know, you're up in the air, meaning that they need Skyfire to hit you when you do come on the board, stuff like that. You know what the reasons are most likely. But that's a safe way to bring your Bloodthirster on the board. Let's think about the Bloodthirster a little differently. Now, in the Khorne Daemonkin Codex, there are a lot of good units that are weak to shooting, especially high-strength shooting. And I'm going to use one good example that I find really helpful for people trying to grasp this concept. Blood Crushers. Collective sigh from Khorne Daemonkin players and Daemon players. Blood Crushers are pretty, I don't want to say bad. I love Blood Crushers. I use them often, but they are viewed as kind of a questionable choice in your list, for the main reason being is that they're only toughness 4. Okay, so they have 3 wounds, great, but toughness 4 means that they're going to be instant death by a lot of stuff. Dedicated shooting, you know, they're pretty expensive for something that can be, you know, just instant death off the board relatively easily. You know, missile launchers, las, stuff like that. So, if you field Blood Crushers or a similar unit, think about high priority targets. Maybe, I don't know, bikes with meltas, stuff like that. Stuff that your opponent wants to deal with. The Bloodthirster falls into that category. Okay, very simple. Very simple. So, that was a little bit longer of a tangent than I wanted, but we've got a lot of high priority targets on our deployment zone, or in our deployment zone. So, turn 1 comes around, you've got a Bloodthirster on the table. You've got maybe like a Soul Grinder on the table. You've got some Blood Crushers on the table. Maybe a unit of bikes. Running out of ideas. You've got stuff on the table that your opponent wants to deal with. They have a very finite amount of shooting that can properly deal with these threats, right? So, the more threats you present, the less they can deal with. the more choices they have to make. More opportunity for you. Very simple, very easy to understand, and why I like starting my Bloodthirster on the board turn 1. Basically, he's going to draw a lot of fire, and he's going to pull that fire away from other key units that you do really need in a Khorne Daemonkin army. So, if he takes a bunch of shooting and takes like 2 or 3 wounds or something, turn 1, you're going to be like, well, shit. I shouldn't have started him on the board. He took 3 wounds, but he's drawn most likely a lot of fire away from your other units, and that is not a waste of points, not a waste of his use, because then you can just change his flight mode and fly him up in the air if he needs to, or run him up there and assault something. Get him in a close combat. Deployment on the table turn 1. Think about it, try it. You might love it. You might love it. Especially if you can start him in some cover. Easy. Easy. Good benefit. So, enough about starting him on the table. Another important thing with Bloodthirsters is to understand is when they are summoned or deep struck on the table, there's a weird, not weird, but a unfortunate chain of events that needs to happen before you can use your Bloodthirster efficiently. Now, as we know, they're close combat monsters. We want them in close combat. So if you deep strike or summon something, which for all intents and purposes, they arrive via deep strike, they arrive in swooping mode. So, say they arrive turn 2. They're just there. Great. Turn 3, you change into gliding mode. Turn 4, you can assault, because you can't assault the same turn that you switch flight modes. That's my understanding. So that's assuming they come out on turn 2. They're not doing anything. They're not assaulting until turn 4. So you can, extrapolate further. Turn 3 they come out, they're not doing anything until turn 5. That sucks. So, starting on the table turn 1, takes some wounds, but he's assaulting most likely turn 2. 12-inch move, he's getting an assault. Or, turn 3 for sure, if he's still alive. Something to think about. Something to think about. That was the main discussion I wanted to have around strategy, because, we could talk a lot about how Bloodthirsters are good in close combat, how to properly use them, but that's more of a general sort of video, maybe around just general monsters, creature, flying monsters, creature usage, because it doesn't differ a ton. The Bloodthirster is not a very complex unit. You want to get him in close combat as fast as possible. Pretty easy. We'll touch on a few things. He's not invincible. Be careful. Don't charge into 7 or 8 Terminators. You'll probably die. Watch out for poison fire. Poison fire is the bane of monstrous creatures. Dark Eldar, especially. But anything that has poison, mean, just nasty to your Bloodthirsters. So keep that in mind. Watch out for poison, watch out for power weapons, watch out for power fists, Terminators. Be careful. They're not invincible. You still need to be careful with them. That's one thing that's very important. Now, briefly about which Bloodthirster you should choose if you're not sure. We're going to start with the easy discussion and talk about the 275 point D Thirster with Dat Axe. The Strength D Colossal Axe. Great Axe of Khorne, I believe it's called. If you are sitting there making your army list and you're like, I wonder if I need a Strength D weapon, you probably don't. That's the simple answer. You probably don't need that Strength D Axe. So think about it, maybe try it once. Try it out. If you do find that, like, wow, that was awesome, the Strength D really helped me out, it did a lot of damage, it did what I needed to do, great. But if you're playing, your average game without, I want to say average, but like, a 1,500 point game with, just basic model choices. I'm going to be very careful with my wording here. you don't want strength D, most likely. It's going to be overkill, essentially. The added utility of one of the other two Bloodthirsters will be more beneficial. Pretty simple. That's my opinion. Some people swear by this Bloodthirster, and it is very good. I'm not going to say that it's not good. It's very specialized. So, that's that. Talking about the other two Bloodthirsters. It usually comes down to, just real quick, the 250 point Bloodthirster to the 300 point Bloodthirster. For 50 points, you're basically getting a Bloodthirster that does the same thing, just better. The lash, or the ranged weapon, is better. He's got one more attack, I believe, because of the blood flail being a specialist weapon, so he gains another attack. He's just a little bit stronger, but he does basically the same job, essentially. I would be tempted to save the 50 points because it's 50 points that you can spend elsewhere. Unless you really want that big old mean Bloodthirster with the blood flail, save the 50 points. That's my thought. Then again, that blood flail is pretty good. Could be a game changer depending on how you want to use this Bloodthirster. So, if you have the 50 points, you may as well try them, just like the D-Thirster. If you're making your list and you started with the Unfettered Fury Thirster, the 250, and you're like, you know what, I've got like 70 points left, bump him up, try him out for one game. Bring that 350 point Thirster and see, or 300, excuse me, and see how you like him. Try it out. So, I really hope that this video was not too misleading in a way, because some people might come and think, you know, we're going to talk about very specific Bloodthirster strategy, and I kind of just talked about deployment and very broad things. But again, treat him like any other assault based unit with the 12-inch movement. Very easy. One decision that's key is when to change flight modes, so experiment with that. Don't forget you can smash. Sometimes that comes in handy. Could want it. Vector strike, things like that. You know, your base rules, Hammer of Wrath. Don't forget those things. I often forget Hammer of Wrath. And really just have fun. Have fun with the Bloodthirster. Use him. Try him in my style as a bullet magnet. You might really be pleased, and it really seems to amplify the rest of your Khorne Daemonkin list. Rather than, you know, pulling him off the table in reserves, the rest of your army kind of takes a bunch of casualties, then he comes on the board. Yeah, he does good, but not till the end of the game because he has to switch flight modes, etc. On the table turn one can be very good. So, I think that's all I want to say, guys. Thank you very much for watching this Tactica video. If some of you guys have been sitting here wondering, you know, where the H is Chief from Chief Live Gaming, it's been a week since he's made a video. I've been painting, I don't know if you can see behind me, right over there, a boatload of Dark Eldar, literally. They're in Raiders. Lots of Dark Eldar, getting them ready, and a lot of you guys may know my plight of starting getting a lot of stuff for a collection and needing to paint it all, and it's very overwhelming at times. So been working on that, but we're going to continue to try every couple days, every few days to upload a video. So look forward to that. If you guys have any suggestions for videos, Tactica, stuff like that, drop them down there in the description. I'll be happy to read them and take them into the consideration bank up here. We're starting to do bat reps slowly. Working on that, working on some more terrain before we commit to the bat reps too much, because we want to have decent looking terrain to show you guys. That's exciting. A lot of stuff happening for Chief Live Gaming. Thanks a lot, guys. Without you, it's not possible. Thank you to my supporters, subscribers, patrons, everybody. Anybody who's watching this, I appreciate your support, and I look forward to seeing you in future videos. All right, guys. Have a great day. Bye now.